Good morning. Am I on here? Yeah, now I am. And I have permission to take off my mask while I'm speaking, and then I'll put it right back on. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Wayne County. I am your worship associate today. My name is Laura Grimm. We are a diverse congregation that welcomes you as you are, regardless of your age, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, gender, economic status, or physical ability. We come together to seek deeper meaning and understanding from each other and the world around us. Your presence here today is a gift that brings us closer to that understanding. We are a very active community that lives its values beyond the hours of Sunday morning services, and I'd like to call your attention to the following. Please join the humanist group today in the large group room at 11:30. For those of you who aren't familiar, the large group room is at the end of the hallway, that way. David Paul will share pictures with us and tell us about his trip to Uganda. After the service today, please visit the stewardship table in the lobby to submit your pledge if you have not already done so, and to get a sweet treat. I hear the York peppermint patties. There'll be a run to the lobby. Stewardship will staff this table every Sunday through the end of March. Join us in spreading the love by ordering a UUFWC Side with Love t-shirt or hoodie. Today is the last day to order shirts. The membership committee has a table set up in the lobby where you can place your order. Sample size shirts are available to help you to place an accurate sized order. This will be a great way to advertise both our congregation and our value of being on the side of love. We are accepting cash and checks. For more information, please contact me or Karen Skubik. Next Sunday is Super Sunday. Next Sunday in the lobby, right after the service, get yourself a $5 bottomless mug of James's favorite fabulous soups and a homemade roll. Your taste buds will thank you. Super Sunday is brought to you by the UUFWC Fundraising Committee. If you would like to find out more information about our activities, feel free to ask Karen Skubik, our membership coordinator.
Thank you, Laura. We are going to be trying some new things and sharing some new information about being welcoming to our visitors. And I know we all love having visitors, whether first, second, third time. We love to see them come back. We love to see people returning. And we love to have visiting ministers as well. So we're going to share just a little bit because Cheryl Wirtz often talks about the ministry of welcoming. And I think that's something that we can all take part in. And just the one thing I'm going to share today that is very helpful for visitors is if we wear our name tags. So I'd like to encourage everyone each week to wear their name tags, and it's not just for the visitors, it's a safety issue as well. So we'd really appreciate if people just pick up their name tags. And if you have lost yours, which happens regularly, there is a sign up in the lobby to get a new name tag. So thank you for being welcoming to everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Laura Birch, and I'm the current president of the board, and I'm here on behalf of the board today to support this year's stewardship campaign. And first, I'd like to offer deep thanks to the entire stewardship committee for the work they do all year, but also especially for the work they did to prepare this particular campaign. I love this year's theme, what if? It's so you. I think it's the second of two questions that UUs love to ask. The first one, of course, is why? These are both wondering questions, and UUs, we're all different. Sometimes I wonder if we really share much sometimes, right? We could come to this place from so many different experiences and perspectives. But one thing we all are is wanderers. And the current civil rights leader from the Sikh religious tradition, Valerie Carr, says that wonder is the wellspring of love. And she says, quote, "Wonder is where love begins, but the failure to wonder is the beginning of violence. Once people stop wondering about others, they disable their instincts for empathy. And once they lose empathy, they can do anything to them or allow anything to be done to them. Entire institutions are built to preserve the interests of one group, one people, over another. And this depends on the failure of imagination." Why is our critical, analytical, skeptical form of wonder? It's often a question about the world as we know it. Why do we exist? Why is violence so common? Why is Sue Gross such a wonderful, delightful human being? It's a deep human question. I don't know how you do it. But our what if is our creative, forward-thinking question. It's the one that allows us to start to imagine things that are not yet to be. And there's so many things that this congregation is not yet to be. So many things that we are that are wonderful and great, but so many things that we have yet to do and be in the world. And in the next few weeks, you're going to hear from a lot of people from our congregation, people representing RE, music, finance, and then stewardship is going to come and wrap things up for us. And I'd really like to encourage you to really listen and think about that question of what if. How can we build a community that isn't just for us, that isn't just about reinforcing what we think we already are, but that is also about building more love for ourselves and for our community and for the world. Thank you.
Good morning. How is Sue Gross such a wonderful person? This is, I think we could do a whole service about that. You'll notice things are a little different today. Our pulpit is moved back, we've got a couple of chairs, and we have a guest minister. Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolfe is our district representative for the UUA, and they are here to do a bit of a kind of a startup and check-in about ministry. Sunshine, could you introduce yourself?
Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning. Hi. So I'm Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolfe. I serve as your congregational life field staff. You don't have to remember all of that. I'm your primary contact with the National Association. My job is to do the 4 C's. Let's see if I can remember them all. Connect. So to connect you with other organizations and congregations asking the same questions you are. To companion you, work with you when there's things going on, if there's a safety issue, if there's a question about something in policy or those sorts of things. To challenge you a little bit, so like to say, hey, have you thought about this or considered that? And there's always the 4th one.
Connect.
It'll have, and consult, and to consult, and that's a big one. We create a lot of resources at the UUA, Unitarian Universalist Association, that answer the questions that you have. So your leadership should reach out to us, and if we have a resource, we will give it to you. And if we don't, we create it. We create everything that we do based on what our congregations ask us for. It's not something we just invent out of thin air. And a lot of the resources we create are created by you. So if you're like, hey, we came up with this idea and we think it would be really great, let me know, and then I can share it with other congregations who are asking those same questions and wanting those same resources. So that is my job. I work with 30 congregations, so no, that's a lot, and that means I don't always get to see everybody all of the time. I also do your Safer Congregations work, so if there's a safety issue, I am the person to chat with about that. And I support our religious professionals and our lay leaders. So, and some of you may know me from CERC. Do we have any CERC Summer Institute people? So Some of you know me from that, and I work with that. I think those are the big things. I've been a UU for 30 years, a religious professional for 22, and in this role for 5.5. So great to be with you here in this amazing new space. This is the first time I've been in the new building, so yeah, greetings.
Thank you, Reverend Sunshine. We're going to be talking a little bit about the role of the UUA, a little bit about what it means, because I am still somewhat of a new minister, and maybe exploring a little bit about what ministry means, both to me and to all of y'all, because I do not do this work alone. Many of you heard me talk about big M ministry and small M ministry. We're going to cross into all of the M's today. And before we begin our worship, one of the things I would really like for everyone to do is just to wave to everybody who is watching us in their pajamas or watching us later in their downtime. Thank you for tuning in to us. It was so great to have you here. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Put down your troubles. Open your heart. Let us begin our time of worship.
Our chalice lighting this morning is Let It Be Done by Monica Cummings. Dear unknown, unknowable, yet known by many names, keep us mindful that we are all related, that when one of us is ignored and treated with dis-ease, we all suffer. Today, let us commit to welcome the stranger. Let us move beyond our comfort zones and connect with people labeled different and pushed to the edges of society. We can make a difference. We can transform lives. We can bring harmony and healing to the places and spaces where we live, work, and play. Let us keep our hearts and minds open and receptive to the still, small voice that calls us to stand witness for those who cannot stand, to speak truth, for justice, for those without a voice, to lead the way on a journey toward wholeness for those without sight. In the spirit of love, compassion, and community, let it be done. Blessed be. Now let us rise in body or spirit as we sing our opening hymn, Building Bridges. The The
You-
music can be found in the teal hymnal.
Y'all know this is a round, right?
Oh, he loves rounds.
Oh. And y'all know that Reverend Sunshine has a fantastic voice. So we're going to try and do this as a round. I'm going to lead the first part. Reverend Sunshine, will you lead the second part? You're UU, so follow your bliss. Whoever you'd like to follow in this.
Is this on?
Can you, Chris, can you hit?
Thank you. 1, 2, 3. Oh, is it off? Is it on now? There we go. One of my favorite lines comes from Reverend Fred Small out in Massachusetts area, which is, don't be afraid of harmony. Harmony is any note your neighbor is not singing. So if you sing a note, you're like, I'm not sure that's right, you're just singing harmony. Got it? All right.
Please, play
Yes,
through it
yeah.
once first.
Yeah.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices
Will you
and
reach
all
out to
of our visions.
all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we can make such sweet harmony. Can I make a recommendation?
Oh, please.
Can I have everybody stop? How many folks know this song? Okay, let's sing it once through together with as much force as we can and maybe just slightly faster. Is that possible? Okay. Can folks hear me? Is this on?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. 1, 2, 3. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to
Building
you.
bridges
Will you
between
reach
our
out to me?
divisions. I
With
reach
all
out
of our
to you.
voices and
Will you
all
reach out
of
to
our
me?
visions.
With
Friends,
all
we
of our
could make
voices
such
and
sweet
all of our
harmony.
visions.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions.
With
Friends,
all
we
of
could
our
make
voices
such
and
sweet
all of our
harmony.
visions, friends, we can make such sweet harmony. That was excellent. Great job.
Rock on, rock on. Rock on, right on. Oh my God.
Good morning.
If I forget and start doing this, somebody raise your hand, because I will do. We have talking hands in my family, so it's genetic. I would like to welcome anybody who would like to come up and be a little closer for our story this morning. I see you all back there. We have a whole lot of room in the front row. All right. More. I thought I saw, I thought I saw y'all come in. All rolling in. Good morning. Hi. Who have you brought with you today, Juliet?
A doggy.
This is a beautiful peach-colored doggy. Welcome. So this is our time when we get to do something, share something together, and today we're going to share a story. And the story I actually have today was shared with me by Reverend Sunshine. And so we're going to do a version of this story. Story's about two children. Their names, well, it's about a lot of people, but there's a child named Amanda and another child named Tiny. It's a surprise to Sunshine, because yesterday I had no clue what we were doing, so. So in this town, small town, there was a little girl named Amanda who liked to help people. Does anybody here like to help people? Cool, that's a lot of helpers. We need a lot of helpers. Well, she liked to help her papa and her daddy all around cleaning the house. Who likes to do that? All right, excellent. Excellent. And she used to help her next door neighbor. She liked to help her next door neighbor, Jim, who wasn't feeling very well, to keep the yard clean by raking the leaves in the fall. Who likes to rake leaves in the fall? Yeah. Who likes to jump in leaves in the fall? Yeah. Who likes to get their really loud blowers out and ruin it for everyone? Okay. Good. We like you too. She also had a friend who was really good in reading, who would help her with her reading. And Amanda was really good in math, so she would help her friend Sarah with math. Does anyone help their friends or get help from their friends at school? Or at work? Absolutely. So one day, their teacher told them that they were all going to have projects to help people in the community. In their class, kids in their classroom were going to help people in the community. Sometimes I bet our classrooms do that. Has people done that, where you go out and pick up trash or, go to the playground and do things? Sometimes we do those things from here too, not just from school. So some of the people are going to help people who are living with an illness. Some of them are going to help people who are not able to clean their house or clean up their yards. Every project was a little bit different. And Amanda's teacher told them that their project was to go to the section of town named Walden, where the people there didn't have as much money and they often had some food insecurity. They didn't have food to eat or the good food that they wanted to eat all the time. And so they were supposed to go help those people. So Amanda couldn't wait. She thought all day about what she was going to do. What do you think are some things maybe she brainstormed? Anybody have ideas? What do you think she thought to do to help the people who didn't have the food they needed? Ideas?
Build a garden.
Build a garden would be one. Any other ideas?
Buy food from the grocery store.
Okay. Yeah. And she thought of all sorts of stuff and thought, what can I do? I'm a little girl. What can I do? So she decided to make sandwiches and take sandwiches down there. And so she got her papa and her daddy to help her, and Jim was feeling better, and so Jim came over and helped make sandwiches, and her friend Sarah came. So they made 100 sandwiches. That's a lot of people. And the next day, the papa drove her down and they put them all in little bags, and they put fruit with each sandwich. And he drove her down to this part of town, Walden, and she tried handing out her sandwiches, but nobody wanted them. And she really they were all like, oh no, I already ate. And she thought, well, what do you mean? She didn't quite get that. And she offered them to people, young people and old people, anybody she could find. And they were all very friendly with her. Most. Some were a little rude, but that was okay. She still offered them sandwiches, everybody. But they all had that. So, Then as she's walking around, she saw this other little girl who was just kind of watching her with like an amused look upon her face. And so she went up to this little girl and she said, "Would you like a sandwich?" And the little girl was like, "No. Aren't you going to ask me my name?" Oh, Amanda was a little bit embarrassed. She says, "My name is Amanda. What's your name?" And the girl said to her, "My name is Tiny." Tiny. Well, and it made sense, you know. It did, because Tiny was little. Yeah, it did. But she said to, Tiny said to Amanda, "Just go with it, Hawthorne. Take your $1,000,000 and, you know, just go with it." Okay?
You can argue with me about it later.
And so anyways, Tiny said to Amanda, "Why are you handing out sandwiches?" And, well, it's a class project. My teacher said that I should come to this part of town because people don't have enough food and they're hungry and I was supposed to help them. So we made 100 sandwiches and we got some fruit and I'm bringing them here. Tiny thought that was kind of funny. She laughed. Amanda was a little taken aback by that and said, "Well, we are hungry here sometimes, but we just don't take food from strangers. If we need food, sometimes people here go to the soup kitchen. They call it, sometimes people call it the soup kitchen. Anybody want to tell me what a soup kitchen is, what that means? You have a thought on that? What about, I've lost all words. A food pantry, thank you. A food pantry, place where people make food and then serve it to people. Here at Trinity, they do that at breakfast, right? If anybody's ever been there, they serve breakfast every 5 days, 7 days? 5 days a week, they serve breakfast at Trinity, UCC, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Tiny looked at Amanda and said, "So your teacher really asked you to help hungry people?" And she said, "Yeah. What's so funny about that? Why do you think this is so amusing? You're hurting my feelings." And she said, "What am I supposed to do?" And Tiny said, "Well, I don't mean for you to get so mad, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but if you really want to help us, do you really, really, really want to help us?" And Amanda said, "Yeah, I do." Well, so we have a garden, a space, actually, probably, a space that the city gave us and said we could build a garden there. That seems like a good idea. Miss Laura had that idea. And then they gave us like 1,000 turnip seeds. And a lot of people here don't eat turnips. So that really wasn't like a big help. And Amanda goes, "Yuck, I can see that. Who eats turnips? Anyone. No one eats turnips, except for Sarah.
Right.
And Sunshine." So what we really need is we need some seeds. What kind of seeds could they do?
Tomato seeds?
That sounds pretty good. What other kind of seeds could they use? Carrots?
Watermelon?
Watermelon?
Sunflower?
Okay.
Hey,
How about we ask them what kind of seeds they want?
There you go. There you go. That's right. She said we need seeds and we don't want turnips. Right, so you can ask her. So you can ask Tiny or the other people, what kind of seeds would you like? And then Tiny also said, and we need help digging. And what is the thing after you dig and plant? Water. Every garden somewhere in July has a path to take. There's either people watering it or there's not. And it's boring in July, so they needed help watering. So that was some things that they definitely needed, right? And then Tiny said, and you know what else would be a really big help? If the people on your side of town would write letters to the city council and tell them that we actually really need a grocery store around here. You know, Hawthorne suggested they go to the grocery store, but guess what? The closest grocery store is 45 minutes away on foot. and a lot of people didn't have cars. So those were things. And so they talked for a long time after that. And pretty soon they weren't just talking about what hungry people needed. Pretty soon they found out that they both liked to jump rope. And they found out that each other knew some funny knock-knock jokes. And pretty soon, her papa and her daddy were talking to Tiny's mom, and pretty soon they became friends too, because they found out that they knew some people that were familiar because they had all grown up in the same town. And then the families became friends. So what Amanda decided to do was to not only go back to her classroom, but she decided to go to her church and to go to her classroom and say, my project is to talk to these people and find out what they need and then come back and ask you if you can help. If you can help us get things. And she was gonna organize the watering schedule. Let me tell you, that's a big one. That is a big one. And so they did that. And they helped them get the tools and gave them the tools that they needed so that they could create their own garden. And they worked together and they made friends out in that hot sun in the garden. Everybody sweats alike, right? It's hot out there. Yep. And they had a big community harvest that the church helped organize for them because they wanted to have a party. They said, could we have a party? And they said, yeah, we'll help you organize a party. So Amanda learned a really big lesson that day and a really big lesson around the summer, through that summertime. And that was that you can't decide what people need. What do you have to do? What do you have to do if you can't decide what they need?
You have to ask them.
Absolutely, you have to ask them. And then when you do that and you start a conversation, guess what else she learned? She learned that sometimes when you start talking to people about what they need, you might just make a friend. And that's what happened. They made friends all around the community. Y'all ever do stuff where you go out and work in the playgrounds or do things and meet someone you never knew before? Anybody done that? Yeah, Olivia's shaking her head. Trevor's shaking his head. Yeah. So, what's the most important part about what I said today, that what we all talked about today? What do you think, Mr. Hawthorne, Mr. Big Bucks? What are you going to do with that $1 million?
Buy everything in Five Below.
And ask your neighbors what they need and go get it for them at Five Below? Okay. That's a lot of stuff, man. For those of you who weren't here last week, a dragon dropped $1 million in the yard and for a playground in Hawthorne. Alex had a proud mama moment, and Hawthorne took all the money and ran.
He would say, I would fight him for the money.
Oh, well, okay. So thank you all for sharing your story with me today and sharing this time with me. And we're going to now move out to our religious exploration classrooms while the congregation sings our children's blessing. Thank you for joining us.
Let us take a moment. Let's quiet our minds. Join me in the spirit of meditation. If it is comfortable for you to put your feet on the floor, I ask that you do so. Let your hands rest in your lap. Let your eyes go soft. Find a space to focus out in the trees. Or if it's comfortable for you to close your eyes, you are welcome to do so. Take in a breath. Think of that moment stepping out of the house this morning. Think of that bitter cold. Think of how it touches your face, stings your skin, and how when you exhale, you can see your breath. The sun is bright and blue, and the air is cold and sharp. And you brave. You brave the cold, you brave the slight annoyance of the weather to be in community. You brave removing the comfortable blanket in order to find the comfort of each other. You come together because you feel the warmth that is in this place, the warmth that comes from each and every one of us. You come to share in sacred joy. Breathe deep. Feel the warmth and the love and the presence of this community. And imagine that warmth radiating out from you. Feel it reaching beyond you, beyond the person next to you, out of this room, out into the community, into the world. My friends, each of you has a warmth that this world needs. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for keeping your flames lit. And thank you for braving the cold. You are needed. Blessed be. I want to take a moment to lift up some of the joys and sorrows in our community. Many of you know of Ezra Schwartzentruber's tragic accident a few weeks ago. There is hope that Ezra will be coming home this week. Ezra's got a lot to go through still. Ezra will be in a wheelchair for a while. He's got a lot of healing to do with his bones, dealing with the fact of losing his hearing in his right ear. And he's still a champion 11-year-old boy who just wants to have fun. We will welcome him back when he is ready to be with us, just as we will welcome Joanna back when she is ready. She appreciates all of the cards and thoughts that have come from this congregation, and she appreciates having the privacy to be able to deal with this and her family on her terms. You all have been wonderful to her. She thanks you, and I thank you. I also want to lift up a sorrow. Helen and Jean's daughter-in-law, Lynn, died suddenly this week. She was 54 years old. It was a tragic shock. Her son is still coping with this loss, quite obviously. It is always a sorrow to outlive a child, and whether it is a daughter-in-law or not, they are so close to us when they love so dearly to us. Our thoughts are with you, Helen and Jean. We are here for you. And I also want to lift up that Cheryl Wirtz lost her brother this weekend, David. And it was somewhat expected, but the loss is always hard. And she said it was bittersweet because this Valentine's Day, she also has a new grandbaby, Carter. It is wonderful to watch the circle of life unfold in all of its mystery. And Cheryl is in our thoughts as well. Each one of us come here with different things that weigh on our minds. Different joys, different sorrows. And if you come today with a sorrow that weighs on your heart, that is too big for you to carry alone, as we sing Spirit of Life, I encourage you to come up, take a stone, and place it into the water. And if there is a joy that you wish to share with the world that brightens your step, please do the same so its ripples reach out to all of us. Chris Struzik is the head of our pastoral care team. If anybody wants to meet with someone from pastoral care to talk about what is weighing down on their lives and their soul, Chris will be glad to meet with you or set up somebody else who is on pastoral care. Do we have any other pastoral care associates here? Sue Gross, of course. And if you wish to meet with me some point in time this week, I will be here. I will have my hands out. Just touch my hand or give me a wink. Let me know that you would like to meet, and I will set up a time with you. Please now join us in our Joys and Sorrows ritual as we sing Spirit of Life. Of life.
Our faith is centered on the belief that we can make this world a better place for all who dwell in it. In order to realize that vision, we need both the motivation and the means. Your donation helps the community put its faith into action by supporting our programming and facilities. This morning and throughout the month of February, donations that are not designated for another purpose will be split with the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or on Mental Illness, or NAMI. NAMI provides advocacy, education, support, and public awareness so that all individuals and families affected by mental illness can build better lives. Thank you, Vicki. That was beautiful. Please join me in this unison reading as we dedicate the offering. The words are on the screen. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others. Our reading this morning is Co-Regulation by the Reverend Elizabeth Mount. From our very first breath, we reach out. Co-regulation, not self-regulation, is our nature. We find our cues from the sun and the moon, from each parent and caregiver. We find our place in this great turning planet by turning to one another, generation to generation. We awaken to the dawn and sleep at the evening's end. Our life's journey is part of something greater, something simple, something divine. A flame cannot be lit without a spark. A life cannot begin without air. And we cannot find ourselves without love. May we reach out to one another. May we offer love and nurturing care. May we join together in celebration of the interdependence of our lives. In this spirit, let us worship together.
I'll stand if that's okay.
You'll stand if that's
Yeah.
okay? Well,
Yeah.
then, if you're going to stand, I'm going to stand.
Stand in the place where you were.
As an REM fan, no. So, we're going to have a conversation, Sunshine and I. And we each have questions we're going to ask each other. Sunshine, you won the toss backstage. Would you like to ask the first question or to receive?
Well, I think I'm set to receive.
You are set.
Should we set the
to
stage a little bit?
bit? Set, please.
Okay. So we met yesterday with some of your leaders. Who attended something yesterday in the morning or in the afternoon? So you can see around the room, it looks like there's maybe 10 or 12. I think we had all together maybe around 25 between the two groups.
Sounds about right.
And it was to talk about, like, what's next? Any West Wing fans in the house? Right? So the president in the show The West Wing would say, what's next? And that was like, okay, we're moving on to the next thing. But it can be really hard to think about what's next in the stress of the world we're living in. Anybody stressed out by anything in the world right now? Maybe just a little bit? Yeah. So what does it mean to try and be creative and values-oriented when it can just be exhausting living each day? Yeah? So that was a little bit of what we talked about. We hit a bunch of topics with the board, with the committee on ministry, with the staff, with a bunch of the leaders of committees and teams. And yeah, so that was what we were about.
Yep, that was what we were about. And part of it is also talking about, I don't know if you know this, but I'm not the first minister y'all had. And I'm not Elaine, and I'm a little different. So, and part of it is also kind of understand what maybe are the roles of a minister precisely in the congregation. And so it was really interesting with the second group that we met. We asked what they think all of the duties of the minister were, and we had 2 full pieces of paper with all of the duties listed. And so I would like to ask somebody who represents the UUA, who has seen a lot of different ministers and how a lot of different congregations do things, what is the role of the minister? What are the expectations?
You know what? Every church is different on this, right?
What?
Imagine my shock, right? Imagine your shock, I'm sure. One of the things I like to say is every congregation is a unique and special snowflake, just like all of the other congregations, just like all the other snowflakes. What that means is we have some things that are foundational. We're all made of water and all that, but the shapes are often very, very different, right? And so there's some core things that are kind of always expected of ministers. To be caring for the congregation, to be a voice, and that could be a voice publicly, that could be in worship. Not all ministers do worship in churches, it depends on their role. But to be kind of available and open to the community. In this congregation, my sense is you're still kind of figuring out. When I first started this job 5.5 years ago, I had a conversation with Reverend Elaine, and I'm sure she has said to you, as she had said to me, that she felt like she did too much, that she took on too many things, and she was a little worried about what she was leaving the next person. And I think that's fair. And to be clear, that she was part of a generation of ministers who were kind of expected to do a lot because they followed a generation where ministers were predominantly men, and they often were married and would get a free employee in the wife, in the relationship. And so it would be that a congregation, yeah, I'm sure, right? We don't do this anymore for a lot of really good reasons, not the least of which is we believe in pay equity.
And happy marriages.
And happy marriages. And also that women aren't second wheels, right? Which is kind of what was going on. In more recent history, as more women have moved into ministry, and we now have more cisgender women in ministry than cisgender men and trans folks, that has shifted. But it's been a question of how do we handle that workload when we don't have two people doing the job anymore? And how do we manage that workload within 40 hours a week? And I'll tell you, a lot of people are coming out of seminary now and insisting on 2 days in a row off every week.
You can do that?
Right? You can. Insist on it in their contract. Right? How many of you get 2 days off in a row from work, or did when you were working, right? It seems like a normal thing. In ministry, my whole time serving in congregations, I got a day off a week. And then I would get a couple of weeks off in the summer. But it was a lot of work. And there's some reasons for this. We know that ministers have a tendency to get sick more often than other professions, and tend to have one of the lowest ages at which we die. I forget what's the death rate, the mortality rate is very low for ministers. And it's because of the amount of stress and the amount of work. And keep in mind, these are folks who want to serve. Walter wanted to serve, right? So we've tried to be really realistic. One of the things that I heard loud and clear yesterday from the board and the Committee on Ministry is you need to say no more. And you all have to help him say no more. Does that make sense? Which means sometimes you may have a project that is the one that is most important to you. How many members in this church? 160?
161.
And then another 50
Another
to 100 friends?
some friends.
Okay, so say 260 people want you to do their special project. Now, so there might be some overlap. But it means that at some point, Walter is going to say no to you. My encouragement to you is to graciously say, thank you for setting boundaries. What can make this possible? How can I make this happen knowing you can't do it? And to say to Walter, say no, damn it.
Okay.
Say no, you got it. I think the other thing that we caught was a few things that frequently it's identified as the minister's job that aren't always the minister's job. So for example, one of them was grow the church. Except the thing is, folks may come to church to listen to Walter, but they're going to stay because of you. The minister is not the only one who can grow the church. It is a community responsibility, right? And what was one of the others? There were a few different ones. And what I'm going to say to you today is, you don't need to figure all this out right now, but it does need to be a conversation. And to know that your board, your committee on ministry, your leaders will be asking some questions about who's responsible where and how and why. And that just because you think the minister should do it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. And if you're met with, I'm not sure that's my job, like lean into that as a point of curiosity and not necessarily a condemnation. Does that make sense? I'm a kind of person who likes feedback. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you. All right. And so in that conversation, there's a point where, particularly with the Committee on Ministry and the board and the staff, I said that the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, has a complicated history with a lot of our congregations. We have not always done things that have been helpful, and even at times have done things that have been harmful. And we have really worked in the last 5 years especially, and also as congregational life staff who serve you directly. Our main job is to serve you, to kind of repair that. And so I listened to some grievances from those groups. And I'm just curious, knowing that we're trying to improve those relationships and shift that story, what do you think the role of the Unitarian Universalist Association is with the congregation?
Well, I think a lot of what we're seeing now, right? Coming in, not when there is an emergency, but just kind of a little bit of this self-care, right? We're not going to the emergency room, we're seeing the nutritionist, right? Figuring out ways of keeping a healthy congregation and being able to provide those resources and the time and energy for that is huge. And also, again, you serve 30
Yeah.
congregations in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. And it doesn't feel good to hear, we don't come around to you because you're not a problem, right? Squeaky wheel gets the grease. And we're also, with all of the redistricting that was going on before, you're starting, it feels like the momentum is getting better now and figuring out what the systems are and checking in more often. And I really appreciate that. One of the things I use, well, first of all, I'm an institutionalist by nature. That was beat into me by my mentor in Richmond, who was a huge institutionalist.
Yes, she was, yeah.
And they were like, use your resources. Do you know how many UUA resources we already use? I am part of the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. I pay dues to be a part of this network so that all the ministers can get together and say, oh my God, I do not know how to handle this problem. And somebody else goes, ooh, we did that. Let me tell you, let me give you some advice, right? And we meet in person with our district twice a year. So there's like twice a year for like 3 or 4 days where I will disappear and go be with all the ministers in the district. And we brainstorm. And chaplains, all the ministers,
No, in the
chaplains.
chapter, district.
Oh,
chapter, not
sorry.
district.
I get all of the terminology confused. I meet with my buddies. And it's good because the collegiality is good and the professionalism is good to have that. Also, Karen is part of her members professional, right? The UU, hold on, I have it written down. MP, the umps. Jenny is part of Loreda, which is the religious educators kind of group that meets together. There's ones for musicians. There is the AUUA, the administrator, for the administrators that Joanne is a part of. Because this is a job that we cannot do alone. And part of what I think is great is all of the congregations are snowflakes. All of the congregations have very vast differences, and having a national organization helps us to move the vision of all of these congregations forward. So I'm one who really appreciates what the UUA does and have recently relied on a lot of the resources, especially from you, with things coming up. And I think the more we can be tied and work together with these things, I think we will see it pay off and the strength of how we are together.
Yeah. I think one of the things my bosses often says is that we're like vampires. We can't come in unless you invite us. So you do have to ask us and reach out to us. The other thing I will say is you have a lovely building, and we're always looking for places that are willing to host trainings for all the congregations in the area. I think this would be a great place to do that if there's a topic you really want to learn about or those kinds of things. So stuff to think about.
I have one in mind. There is a conflict resolution workshop that Teresa Cooley does, who wrote the book about it, that I would love to host here and invite other congregations to come do. And y'all could come to it too if you want. That would be nice.
We hope you do.
So, but one of the things I want to ask about with the UUA is that we are a covenantal faith, right? How many of you have heard that term? We are a covenantal faith, right? How many of you know what that means? Right? We've got some ideas of it because we kind of get the idea of covenant being rules.
Right.
And I would kind of like to talk about what does it really mean to be a covenantal faith, and what are the responsibilities that are attached to being a covenantal faith?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing to know is we're not a creedal faith, which means we don't all believe the same things, which I know is a shock to everyone in the room. But if we don't all believe the same things, then what brings us together? And going back to the Cambridge platform back in the 1600s,
Booyah.
you know you're a religious geek when you say booyah about the Cambridge platform. I actually do love the Cambridge platform, but the point of that document was to say we're all in relationship with each other. And we have to figure out how to kind of do that work. Basically what the Unitarians were saying, we're all getting into heaven, so we better figure out how to get along now, because we're stuck with each other forever. That was their philosophy. And whether we believe in heaven or not, we do have to agree we need to get along here on earth. Now, how many of you feel like society is a place that teaches you well how to be in relationship?
Sorry.
Right? And so we do that here at church. We practice that. And it's not easy. And a covenant is basically a set of promises we make each other, knowing that we're human and we will likely fail at them sometimes. So we will likely break our promises. So the other part of covenant is, how do we bring ourselves back into relationship? Or as I like to say, call ourselves in. And keep in mind, calling in or returning to relationship is very seldom a comfortable experience. Some folks may say, hey, you know, you're calling me in on this thing, but I'm feeling called out. And it's like, well, no. Calling out would be if I told you you said this thing and I'm never going to talk to you, I'm never going to work with you, I don't want to be in relationship with you, you're out. That's not how we do things. It's said to say, you know what you just said was harmful to me, here's why. Let's talk together about how to repair this relationship, right? And by practicing it in our communities, we create a space where we can model it for the rest of the world. It is a form of restorative justice. In a society that so often focuses on criminal justice or retributive justice, where there's going to be a consequence for causing harm, we're saying instead of that, we're going to be in relationship and say, okay, what harm was caused and what needs to happen, not to completely repair it, because we may not be able to go back, but to create as much goodness or balance in the situation as we can. So covenants are really only effective if they're specific about the way we want to be in relationship with each other, and that they insist on us staying at the table, even when the covenant is broken, and not running away. That isn't always easy, and it doesn't also work if you don't have clear boundaries. So if somebody refuses to follow the covenant, then they may be asked to not be at church for a little while and to do a few steps of reparation before they come back. So it's not to say we're not going to say, you can't be here. So if somebody starts yelling and shoving someone, we may say, okay, you need to take a break, and these are the terms under which you come back. Are we okay with kiddos climbing on rails? That feels a little dubious to me. Thank you. I just don't want you to fall on the cement. So again, boundary setting. Yeah, right, that. All right, so when it comes to covenant, I hope you take seriously that it's a way to do conflict transformation work, which can be really challenging for Midwesterners because we're taught that if we say something to someone that makes someone uncomfortable, that might be a moral failing in us. Anybody get that message growing up? I did in Indiana quite a lot. I'm a Hoosier, born and bred. And I've experienced that kind of thought process throughout the Midwest. And to really just lean into, no, the discomfort is a sign that it matters. And then when we say yes to conflict transformation, we create deeper relationships, not rifts. And so to stay connected, to talk to the people who actually harm you, not to your neighbor. It may feel good to talk to somebody. unless you need some support figuring out how to say. So if I'm like upset at Walter, I may go to Laura and say, I have this conversation I need to have with Walter. Can you just hear me out and then I'll go talk to him? As opposed to, oh, Laura, you wouldn't believe what Walter did. Let me just spill the tea. Oh my God, right? So trying to stay in relationship. All right, which I think leads us to our final question. Thinking about the relationships in this congregation, in this community, one of the things that was really interesting to me yesterday, that I think it creates some of that tension that we're just talking about and some confusion, is in the morning, the leaders of the committees and things said that one of the kinds of cultural norms here is that this is a bottom-up institution, that the power and the work really lies with the congregation. And in the afternoon, we heard from you and some of the staff and whatnot that oftentimes, particularly when there's a crisis, but not always, you're expected to be the one to do it and to solve it. And it isn't always clear when does it belong to the bottom up and when is it your job. And that oftentimes when a crisis happens, you feel like you're dealing with it alone and you're not sure who you should be reaching out and those sorts of things. And the board and the Committee on Ministry are saying the same thing. It's not clear who you go to. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Boy, there is a lot of, it's not clear who you go to. That is something I've heard quite a lot. And part of that is we had a system for the longest time. Can anybody tell me if there was an issue, who did you go to? Anne.
I heard Anne and Elaine.
Anne and Elaine.
Yep.
Anne. Anne did a lot of really wonderful stuff. And it was great as a growing community, but we're getting to a size now where it cannot be one person, right? And so what we're trying to do is figure out what all of those roles are and what the definitions are. And, you know, we are building the parachute on the way down, very much so. So we're still figuring out what is the role that, this is something that needs to go to the board. And the board needs to make a decision on. This is something that needs to come to Walter. Walter needs to make a decision as the minister, right? This is something that needs to go to Joanna as the administrator. And unfortunately, we're all figuring this on the way out, and so, or on the way down as we're falling. And so we're still trying to communicate and find better ways to let everybody know what those systems are. We're going to be doing some more definition of what belongs to Joanna as the administrator. Do you know we have an executive team structure in our bylaws? That the two people who make all of the executive decisions are the administrator and the minister. This made sense with Anne. Does it make sense with Joanna? That's something to ask. It may not. Are we compensating her for that kind of decision making? Right? Is that something that is what we really want to do? Do we want to find a way to maybe include the board more with that? Do we want to find a way to include other folks with that? Right? How do the committees report? How do we find out? I am an ad hoc member of every committee. Am I supposed to go to every committee meeting? I wouldn't have a life. Right? And I'm tempted to ask which committee meeting I should go to, but I know everyone's going to say theirs, so we're not going to ask that question. So a lot of this is still trying to figure out, because we are in such flux with so much change, what the new system is in place to make sure that all of you know who to go to when there is something going on, right? And it's always going to be a work in progress. All right. Can we actually, we're going to have a question and answer period after service because we are running late. So I want to honor that because we are running a little long. So we are going to start getting ready to close up. Let us do our closing hymn. Please rise in body and or spirit as we sing our closing hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath. So before we extinguish our chalice with the benediction, we are going to do a question and answer period after the service. We're going to take 15 minutes so we can use the bathroom. And then for those who wish to be in here for that, you are welcome to do so. I apologize to David Paul for competing against his. I would really love to see his presentation, but just wanted to let you know that those are your two options today. Thank you all for spending your morning with us. As we extinguish this chalice, may we remember why we gather. May we ask that big question, why? We are here to make this world a better place. And part of that is learning how to be in covenant and community with each other. To model looking for the best in those among us who we seem to find to be easier to get along with helps to bring us into the rest of the world and to make that global community of which we all dream of. Go in peace, live in love. Oh, and one last thing. I will be, once again, during the postlude, I'm going to walk back and do a receiving line for those people who wish to check in with me. It's just a way for me to make sure I get a chance to greet folks who maybe I don't always get a chance to greet. And if there's something you need to tell me, this is your opportunity for me to listen to you. Thank you again for joining us this Sunday.